Hello students, welcome to the daily news analysis. I'm your educator Prithviraj Singh. Today we'll be understanding the important news articles of 23rd February 2022. So let us begin with the first article. Guys, there was a news on the front page of the Hindu which says West has responded to Russia over its move, when it declared independence to the Donbas region of the eastern Ukraine, and America has imposed new sanctions on Russia. We all know that Russia has amassed lakhs of troops across the Ukrainian border. On the north, it has amassed troops over Belarus and Ukraine border. Then towards the east, it is this area which is called as Donbas area. Now this area is the rebels there are being backed by the Russian forces, and they are fighting against the pro-Western Ukrainian government. On the south, you have Crimea, which was being annexed by Russia in the year 2014, when its pro-Russian president, Viktor Yanukovych, was being removed by the people, and a pro-Western president was being installed at Kyiv, right? So we know that there is a crisis in Ukraine, and Russia is, has, posted its soldiers across the borders of Ukraine, and there is an imminent threat of it being invading into the Ukraine. Now the issue is, definitely you all know that NATO is expanding towards east, right? So there is an eastward expansion of NATO, and if Ukraine is included as a member of NATO, then it would be a direct threat to Russia, right? So therefore Russia, instead of waging a war or invading into the Ukraine, it has declared independence for two separatist regions in eastern Ukraine, right? So as I said, that the eastern Ukraine region is called as Donbas, and right from the Minsk agreement, which you would be remembering 2014 and 15, which actually talked about or negotiated for the peaceful settlement of the civil war between the Russian-backed rebels in Donbas versus the Ukrainian government, right? Now instead of invading or waging a war in Ukraine, it has very cleverly, I would say, used the I would say a more soft approach by declaring the regions of Donbas. There are two regions, guys, Donetsk and Luhansk, two very important cities in Donbas region, and they have been declared as their independence have been declared by Russia, and in this way Donbas region has been given or granted independence at least by Vladimir Putin or the Russia, right? So Putin has recognized the independence of two separatist regions in eastern Ukraine, right? And the eastern Ukraine is your Donbas region, which has two important cities, Donetsk and Luhansk, right? And Russian leader also demanded that Ukraine must end the military operations against pro-Moscow rebels. You all know that the pro-Moscow rebels are being there in the eastern part of Ukraine, which is called as Donbas region. The West had repeatedly warned Putin not to recognize Ukraine's rebels, right? But despite of such warning, Putin has recognized the rebels and has given the independence to these two separatist regions in eastern Ukraine, which is Donbas. I hope it is clear. Now, the moment Russia declared independence of the Donbas region, right, it saw, America imposing new sanctions on Russia. Let us see the issue. Guys, on the screen, you can see the map of Ukraine. To the south is Crimea, which was already annexed by Russia in 2014. And then you have Russia here, and then Donetsk and Luhansk region of Donbas, right? This is how you can see Donetsk and the Luhansk region, and this red lines are your eastern Ukraine, which is your Donbas region, which has the Russia supported rebels fighting against the Ukrainian government, and Crimea, which is already being annexed by Russia in the year 2014, right? So correct, guys, Ukraine is very important for Russia, and Russia, because of its area, its population, its mineral resources, coal mines, it's being said by erstwhile Russian president that if you lose Ukraine, it will be like cutting off the head of Russia, right? So therefore Russia would never like to lose Ukraine, right? Definitely after annexation of the Crimea, it is able to, you know, directly watch the American warships in Black Sea, right? So this is how it's happening. And you know, and guys, in the US and the European Union and Britain has announced plans to target banks, right? So there are sanctions and you know being imposed on Russia post it declaring independence for you know for eastern Ukraine. They have targeted banks, right? They have targeted banks and the elites, while Germany has halted the gas pipeline project from Russia, right? Guys, you all know that there is a gas project called as Nord Stream 2, right? And the major beneficiary is Germany, right? So Germany has clearly hinted that it would be halting the major gas pipeline project from Russia, and in this way Russia would lose a major market in Europe, correct? At the same time, America has also targeted its banks and the elites. You all know SWIFT. America has threatened that Russia would be removed from SWIFT, right? The telecommunication for the financial transactions, right? Guys, there are two important banks, VEB Bank and Russia's military bank called as Promsvyez Bank, right? So VEB Bank and the Promsvyez Bank has been, you know, targeted by the America, which does defense deals, right? And Biden said that starting on Tuesday, right? That is Tuesday, sanctions will begin against Russian elites and their family members, right? So from today onwards, Russia would see sanctions imposed by America, right? So two prominent banks, one commercial bank called as VEB Bank and other military bank called as Promsvyez Bank would be targeted you know, by imposing sanctions by America, right? However, they are saying that these, I mean, many international thinkers are saying that these impositions or these sanctions would be lighter this time and they would not be much significant, right? Now, the time would tell that how harsh these sanctions are, right? Now, Washington also said that it restricted dealings in secondary market with Russia's sovereign debt bonds issued after March 1st, right? So America would be restricting the dealings in the secondary market with the Russian sovereign bonds. So in this way, it wants to, you know, completely dematerialize the Russian economy, while the UK has also slapped sanctions, right? So UK is also not behind. It has also slapped sanctions on 5 Russian banks and 3 billionaires, right? And as we know that Germany has frozen the new gas pipeline which it shares with Russia, right? So 3 billionaires and 5 Russian banks have been targeted by UK. And Germany Chancellor Olaf Scholz suspended the certification process for the Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline, correct? So guys, it is not a good state because although Russia has declared independence for the Donbas region, but it has also seen, you know, sanctions being imposed by America from today onwards, right? I hope you are getting my point. So a former member of the Soviet Ukraine has deep social and cultural ties, right? So people, because Ukraine was being considered as a part of one Russia, one people, right? And there have been deep socio-cultural ties with Russia, but as far as its economy is concerned, it is more drifted towards the developed West, and this is what Russia do not want. I mean, Russia do not want this tilt towards the West, and enough was enough when Vladimir Putin ran out of patience in 2014 when Ukrainians deposed their pro-Russian president. You all know, guys, that there was a pro-Russian president till 2014 called by the name Viktor Yanukovych, right? And he was being deposed in the year 2014, and Russia retaliated, you know, by actually annexing Crimea. Russia retaliated by capturing Crimea, correct? Now, the two regions, Donetsk and Luhansk regions, are collectively called as Donbas, right? and Russian President Vladimir Putin has declared independence to them, declaring them people's republics, right? They are very important for steel production and the coal mining, right? I hope, guys, it is clear. Now, moving to the next article. How big is the insurgency threat in Manipur? Guys, we here at ClatPrep do not limit ourselves to the Hindu newspaper. We also cover important articles from Indian Express, and rightly so. This article has been taken from Indian Express newspaper, one of the most, I would say, prominent newspapers of the country, right? Now, the defense minister has called upon insurgency groups operating in Manipur. Guys, we all know that Manipur would be seeing elections, right? The Manipur Legislative Assembly elections. We also know that Manipur is under FSPA, except the 7 East Imphal constituencies. There have been increased insurgency in past few years in Manipur, and Defense Minister Rajnath Singh ji has clearly said that Manipur must shun violence and come to the negotiating table, right? I mean, the insurgency groups must shun the violence, right? Guys, in order to understand the insurgency in Manipur, we must understand a brief background about him. So the emergence of insurgency in Manipur dates back to 1964, the formation of the National Liberation Front, UNLF, right? So guys, in 1964, United Nations Liberation Front was being set up, and it still remains one of the formidable militant outfits, right? So it is still there, and actually they are demanding a separate, independence, more independence and more autonomy to Manipur, right? And it is basically because of the forced merger. See, forced merger of Manipur with the Union of India. Guys, Manipuri people were not being properly consulted before it was being merged with the Union of India. So therefore, they say that it was a forced merger with the Union of India, and the subsequent delay in granting it full-fledged statehood, right? So, although before independence, it was actually the Kingdom of Manipur, and with the efforts of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, it got merged with the Union of India just after independence, that is on October 15th, 1949, right? Now, you see, guys, from 1949, it took around 23 years for it to be declared as state, right? So, it was actually Kingdom of Manipur got merged into India in the year 1949, but it became state in 1972, right? So after, almost 35 years. So that was a very big time, and that led to many insurgent groups. That led to many, I would say, militant groups, demanding full-fledged statehood. And one such group was UNLF, United National Liberation Front. It is still in operation, right? Now, the later years saw a slew of militant outfits being formed, right? So apart from UNLF, there are many other militant outfits operating in the state of Manipur. People's Liberation Army, PLA, PREPAC, or People's Revolutionary Party of Kangli-Pak, or KCP, Kangli-Pak Communist Party, and KYKL is Kangli Yavol Kana Lup, right? So I hope you are getting my point. See, this delay in declaring the statehood to Manipur was the major reason behind the rise of the militancy in Manipur, right? And many groups like UNLF actually, states the same reason. Also, guys, these valley-based outfits have been demanding independent Manipur with more autonomy, right? When I say independent Manipur, I've said that the whole of Manipur has been declared as disturbed area, right? And the government has imposed AFSPA, Armed Forces Special, Powers Act, where the army officers, army personnel, gets an extraordinary power, to control the civilians, and they may also, shoot any person if is being found, deviating from the law. They can also seize their properties, right? And it has led to many abuses, human rights abuses. Many innocent people were being killed, right? So Manipuri politicians demand that the AFSPA must be revoked, as it is being revoked in the nearby state of Meghalaya and Tripura, right? Guys, the Naga movement in the neighboring Nagaland, right? So there is also, because there is a Naga movement in the neighboring Nagaland, which also demands for more independence for Nagaland, and it has spilled over in Manipur's hill district with NSNIM, right? NSCIN or NSCNIM, which is a Naga group controlling most of it, while pressing for Nagalim, right, or the Greater Nagaland, which is perceived in the valley as a threat to Manipur's territorial integrity, right? In subsequent years, guys, Manipur had been caught in a spiral of violence as various militant outfits has carried out deadly attacks on security forces and engaged in factional clashes. Guys, in the year 1980, the central government declared the entire Manipur as disturbed area, right? So this disturbed area was being declared in the year 1980 and imposed Armed Forces Special Powers Act of SPA to suppress the insurgency movement, right? Guys, plus apart from the Naga movement, there is also, ethnic clashes between the Nagas and the Kukis, right? Because Nagas and Kukis, they both are tribal communities, and they are, ethnically and culturally different, right? So they don't, mingle up, they don't gel up, together. So there has been ethnic clashes between Nagas and Kukis, which led to the formation of several Kuki insurgent groups, guys, which have now scaled down their demand from a separate Kuki state to a territorial council, right? The further continuance of insurgency led to the formation of smaller outfits like Zeliang Gromp United Front, ZUF, and PULF, that is People's United Liberation Front, right? And other splinter groups. All right. So they may ask you question with regard to same. For example, if it is an objective question, they may ask you that when Manipur was given the recognition of state, so it is in the year 1972, correct? Plus, which among the following is an active group in Manipur, insurgent group in Manipur? Then it is UNLF, United National Liberation Front, right? So this is the map of Manipur. It shares its border with Mizoram, Assam, and towards east you have a foreign nation called as Myanmar. Towards north you have Nagaland, right? So there are areas like Senapati, Tamenglong, Imphal East. Imphal is the capital of Manipur, right? So NSCNIM has entered a ceasefire agreement with the government of India in the year 1997, even as peace talks between them have still been continuing, right? So although there is a ceasefire agreement, but still the peace talks are still undergoing. Similarly, the Kuki outfits under two umbrella groups, the Kuki National Organization and the United People's Front, have also signed a tripartite suspension of operation SOO pacts with the government of India and Manipur in 2008. But still, the valley-based militant outfits, the Methi groups such as the UNLF, PLA, KY, KL are yet to come to the negotiating table, right? So in this sense, although the suspension of operation have been signed up by some of the militant groups, but still UNLF, PLA, KY, KL, they still have to come to the negotiating table, right? So therefore, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh ji has said that the violence must come to an end. Right? You all know that Manipur is also undergoing election very soon, right? I hope it is clear. So moving to the next news article, guys. Untangling Kerala's Lokayukt controversy. Few days back, we also had the news session, with regard to Kerala Lokayukt, and there we mentioned the complete details about Lokpal and Lokayukt, right? So you can just refer that video. Now we'll stick to the Kerala Lokayukt controversy. Guys, Lokayukt is an anti-corruption ombudsman, right? At the center we have Lokpal, and in the states we have Lokayukt, right? It is an anti-corruption agency or anti-corruption ombudsman, right? It's a body which actually, receives the complaints from people in general against any public official, right? Be it the minister or the prime minister, right? Now, even the chief minister for that matter is also being included along with the governor, right? Definitely not the confidential or the security issues, right? So we borrowed this principle of Lokayukta from Sweden, right? And many states actually formed Lokayukta, with Maharashtra being the first state to actually come up with the Lokayukta Act in 1970s, right? Although it was earlier, it was being mandated that every state has to form the Lokayukta, but then after a protest, it was being declared that it depends on the state what kind of Lokayukta it want to have, and what should be the tenure of its members and the appointment, etc. Right? Now the Kerala government has proposed to amend the Kerala Lokayukta Act. Right? We all know, guys, that the Kerala government did propose to amend the Kerala Lokayukta Act, and they have done so by an ordinance. So that is where the problem lies, right? That means such contentious bills also are being today passed by ordinance. You all know, guys, ordinance is something where the assembly or the legislature in the form of assembly or parliament is not possibly in session, or either of the house is not there, and then the governor and the president assumes the power of law making. Although it is for a small time period for 6 months, but then it has a force of law, right? So they have moved an ordinance to actually amend the Kerala Lokayukta Act, and a move that has drawn criticism from the opposition. Let us understand what is the act, right? Now the government, in the new ordinance to amend the Kerala Lokayukta Act, has inserted a provision wherein the government can either accept or reject the verdict of the Lokayukta. That means now the ball goes to the court of government. Whatever verdict that the Lokayukta gives, the government of Kerala may either accept them or reject them after giving an opportunity of being heard. Are you getting my point? That means earlier what used to happen, whatever verdict that was given by Lokayukta was binding on the government, right? And the public servants were being required to vacate the office, the moment it was being declared by Lokayukta, right? But then now they have changed it, introducing a new provision in the act saying that the government can either accept or reject the verdict of the Lokayukta, right? So that means the verdict of the decision of the Lokayukta now would not be mandatory for the government to accept after giving an opportunity of being heard. So this has risen many protests and controversies, right? So let us understand the difference between the principal act or the previous act and the proposed amendment. Guys, the Kerala Lokayukta Act came in the year 1999, and section 14 of the Kerala Lokayukta Act says that, I will talk about the original act, original act, that means the act of the year 1999. It said that where the competent authority is the governor or the government of Kerala or the chief minister, he or it shall accept the declaration or shall accept the the judgment or the verdict of the Lokayukta, right? So the word is shall. Shall means it is binding on the government or the governor, right? But the proposed amendment by the ordinance, see here how they have changed the word, the so-called leftist state, where the competent authority is the governor or the CM or the government of Kerala, he or it may, right? So guys, the word shall has been replaced by may. So may means something which is not binding, right? And it has completely changed the meaning of the act, right? So may either accept or reject the declaration after giving an opportunity of being heard. So guys, the intentions of the government are very clear. They don't want the verdict or decision of the Lokayukta binding on them. They want to protect officials, right? So this is the reason why it is being objected. Section 14 clause 2 of the act says that when the declaration so made is accepted, the fact of such acceptance shall immediately be intimated by registered post. So now the word when See how they beautifully change the vocabulary, is being replaced by if. That means earlier it was saying that when the declaration so made is accepted. Now the word is if the declaration is made. So that sounds more convenient. If the declaration is made, is accepted, or is deemed to have been accepted, right? So the word again has been made deemed to have. I hope you are getting my point. If the declaration is made, is accepted, or is deemed to have been accepted, the fact of such acceptance or the deemed acceptance, right? Again, deemed acceptance shall immediately be intimated by registered post. So this is how the ordinance is trying to amend the Kerala Lokayukta Act of the year 1999, so that the state government, saves its officials. I hope you are getting my point. So guys, the changes are proposed through an ordinance, and hence there has been no proper discussion on the matter in the assembly. It violates the fundamental principle of the Central Lokayukta, of the Central Lokpal and Lokayukt Act of 2013. Guys, you all would be knowing that the present Lokpal of the country is Pinaki Chandra Ghosh. Right. And the Central Lokpal and Lokayukt Act 2013 was notified in the year 2014, and Lokayukts are the state equivalents of the Central Lokpal. And as I said that in the original Act of 2013, it was mandatory for all the states to have the Lokayukt. But after opposition, the states have autonomy to frame their own laws. Lokayukt's powers vary from state to state. The first state to introduce Lokayukt was Maharashtra in the year 1971. Today, guys, Rajasthan, Odisha, Bihar, UP, Karnataka do have the Lokayukts, the anti-corruption ombudsman. And guys, it's being said that Karnataka's Lokayukt is one of the most powerful Lokayukts in the country, right? So in this way, the Lokayukt's power in each state are different, and efforts are being made to make them uniform. So they may ask you that, are all the powers in the Lokayukt in all the states same? No, they differ. I hope it is clear. So these are the powers and functions of the Lokayukta. It is an anti-corruption agency which is responsible for addressing the citizens' grievances pertaining to corruption, nepotism, favoritism. And it has supervisory powers. It has a power of search and seizure. It has a power of a civil court in certain cases. It has power to utilize services of officers of the state government, powers of provisions, attachment of assets, so on and so forth, right? It also has a power to give directions to prevent destruction of records during preliminary inquiry, right? I hope it is clear. Guys, the Lokayukt may direct at that any administrative or financial power conferred on it may also be excised or discharged by its officers, right? So it it undertakes the complaints against the administration from any citizen. The complaint of, let's say, maladministration, misfeasance, overfeasance, that of corruption, nepotism. It also accepts the grievance against the accused person or body of person, correct? And the Lokayukta carry out fair and impartial investigations based on facts against the accused. Guys, as far as the Central Lokpal is concerned, the Prime Minister and all the Council of Ministers do come under the ambit or the purview of the Lokpal, and the Lokpal can initiate the investigations against Prime Minister as well as the Council of Ministers, but except for those matters which relate to national security and which are confidential and sensitive, right? So guys, let us start with the important editorials of the Hindu. Guys, on the editorial page, on the left hand side, you had an article about Russian recognition. So it is just a carry forward for the Russia declaring independence to the Donbas region, the two cities in the Donbas region, and it has seen the retaliation by America imposing sanctions on Russia, right? So these two regions, Donetsk and Luhansk, right? Now the recognition of the two separatist groups that control parts of Donbas region. So in this way, guys, Russia is no longer interested in the talks on the basis of Minsk Accords. You all would be knowing about the Minsk Accords of 2014 and 15. It was a tripartite control group, TCG. It was being mediated by Russia, Ukraine, and the rebels supported by Russia in the Donbas region. Plus, it was mediated by France and Germany in Normandy format talks. However, both 2014 and 2015 Minsk Accords failed, but it became a basis for any future negotiation between rebels and the rebels supported by Russia and the Ukrainian government. Guys, it had many provisions like there would be no exchange of the heavy weapons. But when Russia has used the battle tanks along with arms and ammunitions across the Ukrainian border, it has violated the Minsk agreement, number one. Number two, even America has has sent Abrams tanks to Poland, right? And in case of any invasion by Russia, those tanks would be brought in to help the Ukrainian government. So in this way, there is definitely a violation of Minsk agreement. Minsk agreement also declared that these regions, Donbas region, which has the Russia supported rebels, cannot be declared as independent. But because it has declared, Vladimir Putin has declared independence to the two cities of Donetsk, Luhansk in Donbas region. So therefore, it has violated Minsk Accord. I hope it is clear, guys. Guys, even in the last autumn, in the year 2021, the last year, there has been US NATO military exercises, guys, near Russia's Black Sea. As you know that Crimea, lies or seas is strategically located in such a way that Russia is able to watch Black Sea and all the movements of America warships in the Black Sea. But America is also not stopping. There has been America NATO military exercises near Russia's Black Sea, and there have been a clear NATO's eastward expansion policy, which Russia do not want. Putin has also ordered Russian peacekeepers into the region, a move that could spark off conflict with Ukrainian troops. So guys, Mr. Putin may claim that his move is far short of invasion that the America and its NATO ally have been warning of, and all hopes that the threat of conflict would recede. Right now, it's being seen that the situation is not going to be managed. Russia feels that the situation would not be able to be managed. They would not be able to manage and handle without NATO sitting down to serious negotiations, and it also has to decide how to regulate expansion of NATO to Russia's neighboring countries, because if NATO includes Ukraine as its member, then it would be a direct threat to Russia, because NATO or the America or the Western powers would be directly sitting at its nose, down its nose, right? So in this way, guys, even New Delhi has its own vested interest, because because guys, we all know that New Delhi is these days, past few years, is more tilted towards America, right? But because Russia is the topmost exporter of the military weapons, so therefore India has to walk a tightrope. Plus, there are thousands of Indian students studying in medical colleges in Ukraine, right? So therefore, India has vested interest, and rightly so, in United Nations Security Council resolutions. India had vowed for peaceful resolution of the issue, right? But there is a threat that America may impose CAATSA sanctions against India if it goes ahead with any military alliance, or in that sense it has any military trade with Russia, right? Guys, in these turbulent times, the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar would be traveling to Germany and France, and while he has tried to shift the focus of his European interlocutors to Indo-Pacific, right? But the Russia's action that dominate the conversation, right? Guys, Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, he is also moving to Russia, and therefore there are many players now involved. We all know that Russian President Putin also met Chinese President Xi Jinping. So there have been many players coming in. So the situation is very volatile, very sensitive. America is no more world's topmost economy. You all know that post-pandemic China has emerged as the leading economic power in the world, and with its expansionist policy, especially in the South China Sea, India, and towards the west, it is expanding. China is expanding, and therefore America's focus has gone more towards Indo-Pacific. But because of the Ukrainian crisis, Joe Biden, the president of America, is not able to concentrate on Indo-Pacific. However, the groups like Quadrilateral Dialogue, or Quad, where India, Japan, Australia and America is its member, plus the AUKUS, which is a military alliance between US, UK and and Australia, is working well, right? So guys, this is how the things are moving. There has been escalation in the US-Russia tensions over the NATO's forward policy, right? And the America administration is still to decide, on whether to waive or impose the CAATSA sanctions, right? So as you know that CAATSA sanctions are being against any trade with Russia or North Korea, right, and Iran. And because India is entering into a military trade with Russia, so therefore there is a threat that Joe Biden may impose CAATSA sanctions against India, right? I hope you are getting my point. At the same time, there is a very difficult situation for New Delhi, to solve this conflict, right, guys? So this is about CAATSA. A brief introduction about this CAATSA. CAATSA is countering America's adversaries through Sanctions Act, right? So as the name suggests, countering America's adversaries through Sanctions Act means those countries which are the adversaries, right, or the enemies of America. On those countries who are the enemies or adversaries to the interest of America would see sanctions being imposed by America, right? There may be trade sanctions, there may be military arms embargo, right? So CAATSA is countering America's adversaries through Sanctions Act, right? Now it imposed sanctions on Iran because of its clandestine nuclear operations, North Korea and Russia. Russia post the Crimean annexation of 2014, right? And you all know that North Korea is actually, it explodes many missiles into the Pacifics, and we all know that even China supports North Korea, and Iran is post the withdrawal of America from JCPOA. The situation in Iran is also not good, and there are talks going in Vienna and being mediated by Western countries like France and Germany, so that America is again enters into JCPOA, or the JCPOA is being revived. Any which way, India, guys, in the year 2018 has signed a $5.43 billion deal with Russia for S-400 Triumph missile systems, right? And this has come despite objections from America and the threat of sanctions under CAATSA, right, guys? So in this sense, CAATSA is an American law enacted in the year 2017 as a as a reaction against the Crimean annexation of 2014. The act empowers the American president to impose at least 5 out of 12 listed sanctions on persons engaged in a significant transaction with Russian defense and intelligence sectors. Guys, if any country is engaged or has signed a pact with Russian defense and intelligence sectors, then American president may impose 5 out of 12 listed sanctions. And its ultimate goal is to prevent revenue from flowing to the Russian government, right? So I hope you are getting my point. So it wants to prevent the revenue from flowing into the Russian land, and this can be done only with CAATSA. That means those countries which are actually entering into some military pact or some trade pact with Russia, especially in sense of transaction of military equipments. So besides Russia, CAATSA is aimed at enforcing sanctions against Iran and North Korea. So they may ask you that CAATSA is against number 1 Russia, 2 Iran, and third is North Korea, and I expect a question on this. I hope, guys, it is clear. So let us move to the next slide. Now, guys, the CAATSA contains 12 types of sanctions, there are only two sanctions that may impact either India-Russia relations or India-US relations. Now, these two sanctions out of 12 are prohibition of banking transactions, right? So they may impose some prohibition on the banking transactions, and which would mean difficulty for India in making payments in the US dollars to Russia for the purchase of S-400 systems. Similarly, there may also be export sanctions, and they would be very detrimental for India, for the interest of India, right? Which has the potential to completely derail the India-US strategic defense partnership, right? So there is also waiver criteria. That means the case by case, right? So this is how the CAATSA works, and I expect a question on this, guys. The article on the screen, the last article, the regulation, not prohibition, right? It talked about the recent amendment by the Karnataka Vidhan Sabha over Karnataka Police Amendment Act 2021. Now, guys, this amendment of the recent amendment in the Police Act of 2021 has prohibited and criminalized the offering and playing of online games. Right. So you know, guys, that in Karnataka there was an amendment called as Karnataka Police Amendment Act of 2021, and it prohibited and criminalized the playing of online games, right? So that is the issue. Now the Karnataka High Court has said that such amendments which ban the online games are unconstitutional. That means the government cannot ban playing of online games, right? So the High Court of Karnataka has come up with a very good move by declaring this amendment, which has banned the playing of online games, as unconstitutional. So they may ask you in the question that which among the following states has recently passed the act to ban the online games. So it is Karnataka, and the Karnataka High Court has declared this amendment as unconstitutional. Now, guys, there have been two more courts which have declared such amendments by their respective governments as unconstitutional, that is Madras and Kerala. So there are in total 3 high courts which have declared such amendments which prohibit the playing of online games as unconstitutional. Is number 1 Madras, 2nd Kerala, and 3rd is Karnataka. So they may ask you over this in legal section. Very, very important, guys. All these 3 high courts have reaffirmed the Supreme Court's jurisprudence that games of skill are different from games of chance. Guys, Supreme Court is very clear that the games or the online games must be differentiated in 2 categories: games of skill and games of chance. Now, as far as games of chance are concerned, they are called as gambling, whereas games of skill, wherein the skill set is being utilized, are the games of skill, right? So the government cannot ban those games which require skill set. For example, playing chess, horse trading, right, bridge. They all require the skill set, right? So they cannot be called as games of gambling or games of chance. They all are games of skill, right? Whereas they are different from games of chances like gambling, right? So if at all any ban has to be implemented, it has to come on the games of chances and not on games of skill. So the respective state government must actually differentiate between the two, right? So they two are distinct legal concept and constitutional significance, right? I hope you're getting my point, guys. So the famous case with regard to the online games goes back to Chamar Bagwala case. Chamar Bagwala case, the state of Bombay versus Chamar Bagwala versus the Union of India. It is here the Supreme Court clearly said that if any game there is an element of skill is dominant over the element of chance, in any game where the element of skill dominates the element of chance, such games are called as games of skill, and the government cannot ban such games, right? So this is a preponderance test which the government has used, right, for the games of skill. Supreme Court had and various high courts have clearly said that games like rummy, fantasy sports, bridge, chess, horse racing, they all are games of skill. Why? Because they require the skill set, correct? Whereas this position is also reflected in the Gambling Act of most state governments, which often state nothing in this act shall apply to any game of mere skill, right? Now, So all the states like Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and the Madras, that means Tamil Nadu, and the Karnataka High Court has declared such amendments as unconstitutional, right? Whereas the case for Telangana and Andhra Pradesh are still, sub judice in the High Court. That means the decision is yet to come, right? Has yet to come. It has not yet come, right? I hope you are getting my point. So, despite clear precedents of the Supreme Court and the various High Courts, why did this state government issue these bans, right? So, guys, Chamar Bagh Wala case was of 1950s, and they believe that the state governments believe that the case is outdated and the technology has progressed significantly, right? So, Madras and Kerala High Courts have held that games of skill do not metamorphose into games of chance if played online. So, the High Court of Madras and Kerala has clearly said that games of skill do not metamorphose or advance into the games of chance. So they are still the games of skill only. And however, the state government has imposed bans because they believe that the Chamar Bagh Wala case is outdated. So they may ask you, what is Chamar Bagh Wala case? Which issue it talks about? Very important. I expect a question in the legal section. So it refers to the online games, right? The Karnataka High Court has gone a step further and held that it is fallacious to argue that Chamar Bagh Wala jurisprudence needs a relook, right? So in this sense, the Karnataka High Court says that Chamar Bagh Wala jurisprudence is upright and it do not need any relook, right? So in this sense, guys, the courts have objected the total ban on the sector, and this is a very emerging sector. There is a lot of revenue coming in the online games, so therefore the court's decision is upright. It is well accepted, and the online gaming industry, must work without any hindrance by the state government, right? So the state government has to clearly distinguish between the online games, which are games based on skill, and the games based on chance, right? So guys, this is how it is being working. And specifically, guys, in the Union Budget of 2022, the Animation, Visual Effect and Gaming and Comic Promotion Task Force has been set up. That is AVGC task force, right, which actually looks into these activity. However, I agree that there has been many reforms which are required in the sector, and a national policy is required, right? And the government of India, it would give a boost to many things like semiconductors, graphics, telecom, etc., right? I hope you enjoyed this article, guys, and read it. It would be very, very helpful. That's all for today, guys. Wish you all the best. I'll see you in the next class. Good day. Goodbye.